Hello, everybody, and welcome back to The Tea with Crema. My name is Chris. I'll be one of your hosts today, and I'm joined from across the Pacific by my best friend, Emma.
What up from across the Pacific?
Today, we will be unlocking some of our childhood memories and taking a trip down memory lane by reviewing some of our book recommendations, book experiences, literacy journeys as children. You know, at this point, I don't want to say I've given up on book club, but it's not working out. And so instead, we'll just talk about books. It is what it is. It's fine. Maybe this will inspire people.
I think we need less heavy books. I think that's the problem.
Okay, first of all, Felix Ever After was a super light book.
Yes, it was light and it was fun and it was easy breezy. But this one that you just chose right now, that one was heavy. It is heavy. Like I'm still making my way through it because it's just.
The Poet X was also easy. Didn't do that one.
You know what? We just need to be better about it. It can be our 2023 New Year's resolution.
Clearly, you gotta put some books on the vision board because we're struggling. So before we jump into our trip down memory lane, we gotta do our tea check. So Emma, what tea did you bring today?
I brought a repeat. Sorry, y'all. It's a peach and passion fruit tea from Ahmad Tea. It's delicious. It's the job done. It's also in a really big box, so I'm just trying to make my way through it. But yeah, that's what I'm drinking today. What are you drinking today, Chris?
Wow, what a tea, Peter.
Tea Pete.
Wow. So today's tea is not very good.
Oh.
But it be like that sometimes when you try new things. It is called Arabesque, and it is from August Uncommon Teas, which I'm kind of surprised in a bad way because the last one that I had was actually pretty good, and I've only seen really good reviews about this tea, but Arabesque just didn't work. I don't know. It's a green tea base, so it has sencha green tea, Yunnan green tea, Turkish orange, Madagascar vanilla, and Brazilian jatoba wood with some lemongrass. And I don't know. It's almost like metallic.
Oh, it just sounds like a case of too many again.
I think it's the two green teas.
But metallic.
Like when you oversteep green tea.
Oh, yeah, and it gets that, like, it hits your back of your throat.
Yeah, I think that's what it was. But the weird part is that I didn't oversteep it. So I don't know why it's not good. It just isn't. But I tried. So, Arabesque, not for me. Wouldn't recommend it. 1 out of 5 stars. I'm actually having a hard time. I've been drinking it all day, slowly, because it's not good. But I don't like wasting tea. But anyways, back to the topic at hand. Looking at our books. This is one of my episodes that I was really, really passionate about. I know I have really, really fond memories around reading as a child. And I feel like you do when you talk about it. I feel like you have really fond memories.
Yep.
And then they get a little gray. And then they get better. And then college. And then we're adults now. And so I just wanted to go back to those fun, fond memories when things were, the grass was greener. Everything was more bright. It's just more fun. Shout out to Gladys Knight and the Pips, you know.
I think it was also because, we don't have to pay bills. Man, books are expensive. I don't know how my parents, afforded my book habit, but we out here.
So our first open up is we know that we both loved reading. We've talked about it a lot. But who or what was the thing or the person that really inspired you or got you going? Like how? Because you don't just pick up books and just go for it. So what got you going?
So I remember being in kindergarten and kids were learning how to read, but I was already reading. So teachers always had to kind of figure out okay, what can we give her so she's not bored? And I remember always going to the bookstore and being able to pick a book. And my Auntie Naomi, rest in peace, she is the one who really fostered that love, I think, because she was an avid reader too. But she was an avid reader of the books that you found in People magazine. So if People magazine reviewed it, she wanted it so she could read it. So she was really big in to staying on top of pop culture. Also, she was a hairstylist. So I think that was one of the things that was just that was the world she was in. So new music, new books, things like that. She was always at Barnes & Noble, at least if not every week, every other week. And if I was fortunate enough to be near the near the hair salon at the same time, then she would also pick me books. Like, she took my sister shopping for clothes, but she took me shopping for books.
We all have our own love languages.
And I think that that's like, and my sister was like definitely like her favorite, like, because it was my mom's oldest sister. My sister's also the oldest. And I think they connected on that level. My aunt saw like how not differently they treated my sister and I, but that they would, like always expect my sister to be a good role model and things like that, which is what my grandparents had put on her. So I think that's why they connected. Anyway, now I'm getting into an Auntie Naomi episode. This is not it. But this is an episode to those who have instilled reading in us. So yeah, shout out to my Auntie Naomi for taking me book shopping instead of clothes shopping. Who was that person, or what was the like turning point for you?
I think I was also reading before I got to school. I don't remember specifically, but I feel very confident that I was reading before I got there. And so, yeah, just really running with it and going for it. I think the person that I remember the most in terms of encouraging me to read is the librarian from my elementary school, Miss Sutton. And crazy part is that she was because my dad went to the same school that we went to growing up. And she was his librarian as well. And so, like, she knew him immediately because that was one of her students, and then to get to know us and see us growing up was also really cool.
Second gen.
She definitely encouraged me to really continue and take up reading, and I just remember her all the time because I was in the library almost as much as I was in class, just because they were just like, go get a book, just go get a book to read, you've already finished everything, go get a book. And I remember we had a book store, a book sale of some sort. And it was so cool because even the newspaper came and they were interviewing people. And I was quoted in the article. And my mom saved the article, so I have it. It's laminated. And it's the first time your boy was ever in the media.
Yes, Anthony Smith, right.
So just know we was out here talking about reading and our love of reading. So, of course, we had to have this episode. So I would say she was the one that like really took that little spark and just like whoosh.
I love that. Did you guys, when you were in elementary school, did you guys have library monitors?
Yeah, I remember checking in books as a student in elementary school.
Like you would be like...
I literally like lived in the library. I checked in the books. The kids came to me to turn in the books. I sat at the desk and scanned them in.
Oh, you were that kid. No, I'm just kidding. No, that makes that. But yeah, like in elementary school, I think I was starting 4th grade. And it was just kind of like each class would get a turn to like do it. And so for that week, you would send kids out. So they would give you the homework and you would stay there, help out with like the reading time and all that stuff. And I just remember always like signing up to be a library monitor. And the teachers were also like, yes, please get out of the class because you are being a nuisance. And I think that's the problem when you're a GT and like, it's hard. And I understand how hard it is as a teacher, like, and especially back in those days, right? It was like, it's either we give them more work, we send them out, or like, they're just gonna
possibly a terror.
Yeah, exactly. And so I feel bad that the teachers had to do that, but it was my favorite time because then we could also, if you were a library monitor, then you were also a lunch monitor. So then you got to go work in the cafeteria. So then my favorite days to work was beef and bean burrito day. Because then you would get 2 beef and bean burritos, not just 1. And that was the highlight. Oh, and then if I worked on spaghetti day, oh, it was done.
I cannot.
I worked at the cafeteria based on what was being served that day. Shout out to all of the librarians in our lives who encouraged us. Cause you know what? After you said that story about Miss Sutton, it reminded me of being in middle school, and the librarians would have me read the books and review it and come back to them and let them know like if it was okay for them to put it out, because we were at a Baptist school. So there were sometimes that there were topics that I was like, so this book has a teenage pregnancy in it, and they're like, okay, we can't push that out. And they're like, I was like, so this one has
You were that kid out here snitching on the books.
I was, which I think that like they didn't have time to read all of them, right? Because kids were like recommending them, and so they were like, okay, let's just buy it and then we'll like go along with it. And I was like, yeah, y'all shouldn't be like wasting the school's money on this, but
You know, it's fine. They have the books. Mine as well.
All right. Oh, man.
So throughout your life, would you describe yourself as an avid reader? Someone who just reads all the time? Big reads?
Yeah, I think that I always had a book. I always had a book in my hand, probably until I reached college. And then it was just like, there was just a lot going on that I couldn't read as avidly as I wanted to. And then even probably like when I started working too, I wouldn't say that I became more of an avid reader until I moved to Japan because, you know, I commute all day, so I have to do something while I'm on my commute. It's about a 45-minute commute. So I've read more books in these past like year and a half than I've read in so long. And it just like reminded me like how much I love reading because I'm like reading books that are like, you know, some YA novels. I'm like reading what the kids are into. I'm reading like things that I'm interested in. I'm reading like really scary books that I just like have to then find books that are not scary afterward. But I think it's definitely rekindled a love for me now as an adult reader. But yeah, what would you say? Would you say that like, how did your reading journey flow from the time you were a kid until now?
I've had a love-hate relationship with reading through time. So elementary school, I loved it. I just would stay in all weekend sometimes if I had a good enough book and just read a book. And that's what I would do. My siblings were outside playing with friends and I was just like, no, I'm good. I'll read a book. Not even watching TV. I'm just going to read a book. And then I think middle school is where it got a little tricky because then I wasn't reading for enjoyment as much. I was reading a lot more for, you know, school assignments and stuff. And I think what really killed the joy for me was reading a book, writing down my interpretation of said book, and then writing a paper on it, and then having the person grading the paper say that my opinion was wrong. Like that did not go over well for me. I was just like, how are you going to tell me? And I've always had that issue, even in high school and college, of if I read this book and this is what I took away from the book, how are you going to tell me that I'm wrong? I don't understand. Like, we've not lived the same life experiences. I get that there might be some like academic point that you're trying to make, but at the end of the day, after the book has been published and it's essentially left the author's brain, like it's really up to the audience to interpret it and take it and give it a life of its own. And so I that's where I started to really, really struggle with, people like are essentially reading for like the right answer.
Yeah.
And then when I stopped doing that after grad school, I've started to get back into it slowly because now it's, again, I'm not reading for the right answer. I'm just reading for enjoyment.
Yeah, which I feel like that's what middle school and high school does to you. I wonder, you know, we haven't been in middle school or high school in a very long time. I mean, I'm still kind of adjacent to it, but I do remember like it was so prescribed. Right? You're reading for these things. You're reading for these themes. You're reading for these like hidden messages that I was like, I understand at like a analytical and critical thinking level that, okay, yeah, I should have these skills, but also again, like why is my analysis different from your, like why is that counted against me when I have this analysis of the book versus your analysis of the book?
Because it's one thing to say like, is this alliteration versus why would they do alliteration?
Yeah, exactly, right? Like, that was always my biggest thing. I was a very good, like, formulaic writer. I was a pretty strong writer. I could play the game. I guess that's what I'm trying to get at. But I understand your point of, like, why does that... That's sad. I find that really sad that they would dock you points on, like, having a different point of view than them.
Yeah, middle school wasn't great. All the time. It
wasn't a time to be alive, is what I mean.
Yeah, so it'd be like that. But it's fine. I'm getting better now. Do you have a favorite, or did you have a favorite genre when you were growing up?
I really liked... No, I read everything. I was gonna say, I really liked, and I was like, no. No. I think I just read everything, and I was always really into seeing what other people were reading, too. Like, I don't know if you remember the Aragon. Is it Aragon or Aragon?
Yeah, the dragon one.
You opened it, and then there was the map. Like, if you took off the back cover...
Oh, I didn't know it did that.
Yeah, like if you took off the back cover, it turned into the map of Aragon. But I just remember those being like really interesting books, but I remember my mom not buying them for me until it came out on softcover, because those hardcover books were so expensive, and I like didn't realize how expensive they were. You know, like a lot of things, I didn't realize how expensive they were. But yeah, I think I was very into fantasy though, like witches, vampires, werewolves, count me in. Yeah. What about you?
I would agree. the less based in reality it was, the more I enjoyed it. Because it's just, that was part of the purpose of reading, was just to be somewhere else for a little bit, experience a little journey, do something a little different. And so, yeah, the less grounded in reality it was, the more I was into it. So fantasy for sure. I remember reading all of those books. Aragon's the one with the blue dragon, and then there's the red dragon, and then there's the golden dragon on the covers.
I just remember that it was not made, it didn't adapt well into film. I just remember that. I think they tried the first book and then it just was not good.
Oh yeah, that movie was terrible.
Yeah, exactly. But like, you know how you were like reading all those fantasy novels? Like, I remember reading those fantasy novels as well. Did you ever wish that you had seen more diversity in the characters? Or do you think that that was something you actively thought about as a kid reading it?
I think it wasn't necessarily something that like I actively thought about, but I do know that the great thing about my default mentality is, again, like people that are similar to me. So the great thing about, like, again, fantasy novels is that oftentimes they didn't spend too much time describing the main character's like physical appearances. Or if they did, I just always forgot and then kind of like put myself as the main character anyway.
Sounds about right.
So yeah, that's how I've always read books, is like, if I was the main character, how would I be feeling and experiencing these things? So I guess, I don't know, like representation is great in the sense of, I think the diversity of experiences would have been really great. But in terms of like characters that look like me, honestly, I just ignored physical descriptions and I made the characters look like how I wanted them to look like anyway.
I honestly didn't. I remember being a kid and not really seeing a problem with not seeing myself in the books. You know, like if they were like, she had big hair and buck teeth, I was like, that's me, girl. Hermione Granger. You know, and then they were like, Cho Chang. I was like, yes, Asian. But I don't remember ever having a point where I was like, oh man, like I really needed this like character. But now as an adult reading books that are like based in having, you know, like BIPOC folks represented, I'm like, dang, that would have been a huge game changer, I think, as a child. So like as I was actively taking in books, I think it would have definitely changed the way that I saw, you know, certain things and like saw represented stories.
I get like the content of the story, but that's the great part about, again, literature versus like a film or a TV adaptation. Yeah. Once you see the character in a movie or a film, that actor or however they've chosen to represent that character is always, for me anyway, it's always kind of like burned into my mind. And so now I see that person if I'm reading the book. But I think with literature, and again, especially reading like fantasy novels where it's not really based in anything, it was really easy for me to just put myself or people that I wanted into that. And so I guess it would have been nice to read things that were more reflective of like my culture and experiences. But like, I don't know, again, books for me where it's easy to escape into a book and really just kind of fill in, because an author can't describe everything because then the book would be terrible. And so that's the nice thing about books, is that you can kind of fill the void with things from your life that make you feel more comfortable and immersed in the story.
I guess I was just getting at that because I always pictured main characters as white.
Oh.
I never saw, because like, and I didn't think that there was anything wrong with that because that's the way it was reflected in films, that's the way it was reflected in books. And so in my head, they were always like Eurocentric. And I guess that's what I'm getting at, is that like, I didn't see a problem with it until I started reading like books that were actually written by BIPOC people, for BIPOC people. And then I was like, oh, yeah, there was definitely some internalized things going on. But I was just like an active reader and just like, you know, taking it in as it was. I don't know if that did a number on my psyche. It might have. But I definitely only ever like saw, you know, white characters in my head. So.
Interesting. Okay, I see that. I don't really know what drives that mind's eye kind of thing. Because again, you heard me, I put myself in the story. So I saw myself in the story.
I was Harry Potter.
I was him until they made the movies, and then I was like, oh, okay. Okay, I get it. Like, fine, y'all clarified just to make sure. I think the only thing that in hindsight would have been nice is having non-heteronormative stories. That was always, I wouldn't say always something, but it was like a little like thing in the back of your mind where you're just like, okay. I don't know how to explain it, but it was always there. It was a little thing.
And it was always
right
like
there in the back.
So hush-hush, yeah, having like queer books too. It was like, that's the queer book, you know? Or even if there was like, if it did exist and you had like a queer like couple or something, that became like their only personality. Is that like, this is so-and-so.
Oh, I didn't even know there were gay characters in books until high school.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I can't even be like, I didn't even know those existed until high school. And then I was like, oh,
we out here.
I see.
We trying to be
and
out
so,
here.
yeah. Again, that was the thing about books, because technically until it was written, it wasn't written, and you could do whatever you wanted.
Mm-hmm.
So, that was the nice part about books. But I love that. Now I want to get into some specifics, though. I enjoy talking about general literacy experiences, but now it's time to really start recalling some books that took you through those emotions, got to you. They touched the deep parts of your soul. Okay? That's where we're at now. So are you ready?
I don't think so. This first question, can I ask it to you? Because I don't think I have one that I can like remember that I was like, So what is the first book that made you laugh out loud?
So the book that got me laughing out, like literally loud, I was crying reading this book. It was the weirdest thing, was Sideways Stories from Wayside School. Well, I remember the book was about kids at a school, and each floor of the school it was wild, and the characters did crazy things. And when I laughed, I remember literally laughing at this book. And I'm afraid, it's one of those things that I'm afraid to read it again, because I would hate to read it again and then be like, wow, I was so childish. And then it'd be like, well, yep, that's the point. So that was my first book that like truly laughed out loud. Giggle fit. It was a whole experience.
That's so funny. The Captain Underpants books. I remember my mom hated buying those books for me because they were so dumb. It was literally potty humor. But I remember like reading it and I was like, this is so funny! Poop! He's a toilet!
I can't. Nope. I was with your mom on this. I couldn't stand the Captain Underpants books.
She was like, what is this book? And I was like, Mom, please. And I remember she was like flipping through the first couple pages. She's like, this is a comic book. This is not even a book. She's like, no, I'm not spending $15 on this. And I was like,
on this graphic novel.
Yeah, I think those are like one of the, I can remember like actively ha-haing though at those books, but I don't remember like reading a book and like dying of laughter.
Oh man, that's okay. We'll go back into your childhood and kind of insert that book in there and see what happens.
Just kind of like
time travel. That'll be my first mission.
Yes, please. Okay, next one. What is the first book that made you cry?
Number the Stars.
Oh, Lois Lowry, right?
Mm-hmm. And I didn't even get to cry in private. It was a read aloud in 3rd grade, and we all cried. The teacher cried.
Oh my gosh.
All of us in the class cried. So yes. So not only was that the first time I cried at a book, that was the first time I cried at a book collectively with other human beings. We were all sobbing. So that would be the first one. I have the next one. I'm going to let you answer, though, just in case it's the same one.
Oh, probably not. But I think I always talk about this book, and I recently tried to reread it, and I was like, I don't know if I can get through this book. Maybe because it was an ebook. The Book Thief is the one that I remember the first book making me sob. Like, sob my eyes out. And I'm sensing a Holocaust theme. Is your next one Boy with the Striped Pajamas?
No, I didn't read that book. It was Bridge to Terabithia.
Yes. Maybe that was actually the first book that made me cry. Because
that ending was a setup.
And the thing is that it just happened so quickly. They were happy. And then all of a sudden, girl decided she wanted to go across the bridge by herself. Swept up.
And that was it.
Dead. Sorry, spoiler alert. It's also been out for 30 years, so y'all can...
There's a movie. Honestly, if you didn't know what the ending was, I don't know. I don't know where you been.
Oh, that was a good one. Yeah. I remember I actually just recommended it to a student. They're like, what was your favorite book growing up? And I was like, Book Thief. And I was like, I need to stop saying that. I don't know why it's my knee jerk, like, the one that I recommend every time.
People are going to start thinking you're a little,
Is she okay?
Is she sad?
Is she okay? Because, yeah, it's from the point of view of death. I don't know. I was going through some things. What is a book that has impacted you?
That is my reworded version of Emma's original question.
What's a book that has effed you up?
Just left you different. You just read that book and you were different afterwards, and not in a good way.
In a good way. Just
mine was A Child Called It, and it was a high school book, and I don't even want to talk about what it was about, but it was one of those things that like once one kid I think like found it and read it and then recommended it to everyone read it, and then we were all
messed up,
collectively traumatized. I don't know what it is with me and books and like it always being a collective experience, but maybe that's why I really want this book club to work. I just have fond memories about reading books and being collectively connected to people. So yeah, that was it. I'm not going to talk about what it was about. I wouldn't recommend it. Don't do it to yourself. It messed me all the way up. Don't do it.
Your children.
Don't let them do it. What about you?
Mine that I can like actively remember being messed up in that way after was Go Ask Alice, which I hadn't thought about until I had saw it on a article that was like 30 millennial books that'll give you nostalgia. And I was like, that wasn't nostalgia. That was trauma. That was clearly packed away. And then all of a sudden I saw it and I was like, oop, triggered. That and the Ellen Hopkins books, which if y'all know what that was Crank and Glass. Like they were written about teenage drug addiction, and I think that they were definitely written as cautionary tales, but I remember eating those books up and I was like, oh, she did what for the drugs? Like, no. And I remember that one actually, like those two books actually like going under review at my middle school because it was such like dark themes. Which again, I think that they were very valid topics. I would have to read them again to see if they were like actually good. I just remember being deeply like traumatized after reading them.
She had a lot now that, because I don't know what it was. When you were originally mentioning it, I had no idea what you were talking about. But then all of a sudden, like when you said it just now, the covers just like popped into my mind.
Do you remember those? And they were thick.
I never read them.
They were thick and they were little.
I avoided books that scared me, and the covers of those books scared me, so I didn't read them. But I remember them now.
They were very thick. They were at least like, I want to say they were a good like 400 or 500 pages, only because each page was just like a poem, and they were tiny. Like it was a tiny sized book, but very thick. Yeah.
I also don't do poetry well, so that also might have been why I didn't read them.
There's some genres that we just don't read well, and that's okay. Just be one of them. Okay, so moving on. We've done the books that made us laugh, the books that made us cry, the books that effed us up. Now, let's do some recommendations, as we always do. Starting from, I guess, early childhood, so kinder to 4th grade. Do you have any books for that?
I mean, for me, at that age, I was like tearing through the Magic Treehouse books.
Yes.
I still have my original box set. Like, it's literally a Treehouse box set. And then my mom still buys me some of the copies now, because I think she's still writing them and still actively releasing them. So I would recommend them. And I think I really got into it because the first one's about dinosaurs, and I loved dinosaurs. But I would also recommend Fox and Socks. It's a tongue twister book by Dr. Seuss. I know Dr. Seuss is a little problematic now, but
oh man,
I just really like the book. Okay, guys? I just really like the book. In fact, I am willing to give anyone $10 if they can go on Instagram Live, invite me there, and they can read the book all the way through with no issues.
$10.
I'm just saying.
$10.
$10. If you can go on Instagram Live and read the whole book start to finish and not get tongue-tied once.
I might have to go on that Instagram Live, try my hand at that $10.
I'm just saying. And then Cook-a-Doodle-Doo. A little cute little picture book. Really got me into cooking. It's a rooster and they cook strawberry cheesecake.
Oh, is that the one that they have the
recipe?
Yeah. I remember you telling me that.
Really got me into cooking. So those are my 3 recommendations for early childhood, younger kiddos.
The Tea with Carmel recently helped with Shemaine's library, and after sending those books to her, I was like, oh my gosh, I read every single Roald Dahl book. So yeah, I definitely recommend those. I think my favorite books were books where they like connected to each other. Like it was either like sequels or the characters were grown up in the next book and were now having like their own kids and stuff like that. So definitely I remember reading in like 4th grade the Charlie and the Chocolate, no, maybe I was younger than that, probably second grade. Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and then Charlie and the Glass Elevator, I think.
The Great Glass Elevator.
Yeah, the Great Glass Elevator. But yeah, all of Roald Dahl's books, I think they were thin enough that you like got through them really quickly. James and the Giant Peach, classic. The Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, classic. I think it was called Twits. It was about the sisters. That was also one of them. But yeah, it was like this whole box set that we sent to Shemaine. And I was like, yes, all of these books. So highly recommend those. Moving off of the Roald Dahl books. Yeah, Tale of Despero. I remember reading that because it was in the, do you remember getting the Scholastic
book order?
Yes, the book orders. And then you would like, it was like paper thin and you could like flip through it. Yes, I remember that. And always circling the books that I wanted. Babysitter's Club. I think I read that one in 4th grade. And I remember reading The Truth About Stacy. And that's when we find out that Stacy has diabetes and she's like keeping it a secret and she doesn't want anyone to know. And everyone's like, why is that new girl like so snobby? Like, why does she think she's all that? Blah, 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 blah. Like, and then she always has to leave class and da 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 da. And so it's just girls starting rumors about her. And then she comes out and she's like, I'm diabetic. But I think to me, I was like, I wonder why she was keeping that a secret because my grandparents are diabetic. That was the first time reading about a Japanese character with Claudia and her family. So that was like Asian representation right there. I think those are like some pretty good like early childhood. What about like middle YA?
Some of my 2 favorite books, one of the only books that I have read multiple times and intend to read actually coming up pretty soon just because
it's that time.
But the 2 would be Bless Me Ultima by Rudolfo Anaya.
Yes.
I've read that book 3 times now at this point. Definitely would recommend it. And then House of the Scorpion by Nancy Farmer. I've also read that book, I think 3 times at this point. And when I didn't even have to look up the authors. I just
knew them.
So I would definitely recommend those 2 books for the slightly older audience. But also, again, I'm about to read them as an adult. So
still good.
They good.
Still good thing.
Still good.
Mine would be A Wrinkle in Time. All of those books, the Madeline L'Engle. Yeah, The Wrinkle in Time. I actually read, like, I read them in order. And again, that's what I was talking about, that I love reading books. And then in the next one, like, the main characters were a little bit older and they were married. And I was like, oh my god, they have a baby! So it's like, as it was getting older. So I loved those books. I also really liked The Uglies. Did you ever read those?
The Uglies, Pretties, and Specials?
Yes. Do you know that they're gonna make it into... It's actually coming to screen?
I don't want that.
Yeah,
I don't want that.
I remember reading that and really internalizing those books. So y'all can just tell where I was at. I don't remember much about it. I just remember being like, this is messed up. I think that was like my first introduction to dystopian novels. And like, you know, like, oh, there's like this world out there that people are thinking of as futuristic. You know, that was around the time that we read like The Giver and...
The Giver wasn't that great. Do you have any for, like, the slightly older audience?
Yes, all of mine are, like, for the slightly older audience. I think that's where I'm kind of at. Obviously, Harry Potter. I know J.K. Rowling is a TERF. I know we shouldn't be supporting her work, but I really, like, truly think that it's just good writing. You know, it's, like, good escapist writing. And I stood in line for 5, 6, and 7. Like, stood in line, waited for those to come out, stood in line for all of the movies. Yeah, so I'm just, like, kind of one of those ride or die Harry Potter, which I know is so problematic. I'm still trying to come to terms with it. Definitely The Hunger Games. I loved all 3 books. Haven't read the prequel yet, but that is up there. Any of the Sarah Dessen books, those were like, that was my jam. If you currently read Colleen Hoover, then as an adult, you know all about Sarah Dessen. Sarah Dessen was like, she would write about those like little town, like romance, like new girl in town, her dad died, and she's a runner, and then she falls in love with this like local kid and they like start running together. My favorite one from Sarah Dessen is The Truth About Forever. I also wish I had read these as a younger student, but now as an adult read it and like really appreciated it. And again, following in that same vein of like fantasy is Lobisona by Romina Garber. That one was fantastic. It's about a werewolf and in this culture, all the males are werewolves and all the females are witches, but she's a hybrid human, and her father's a werewolf, so she actually becomes a werewolf. And so it's like, talks about, you know, xenophobia, in more symbolic terms, but talks about like just like the stigma around different cultures and like the way that they present males versus females and gender roles and things like that. So that was one of them. Just that whole series. I'm hoping that they're coming out with number 3 very soon. Legendborn by Tracy Dion. That one's coming out with book number 2 in October. But yeah, Legendborn is more magic. There's witches. This girl she infiltrates, and this is the best word to say it, this like secret society of witches, but she's black, and they're like, why does she have powers? And they're like, well, yes. So anyway, what about you? I'm sorry, I felt like I talked for like 30 hours.
Yeah, that was really your category. You ran with that one.
I've been reading the YA, y'all.
I think the only one that I would really recommend would be Son of a Witch, which is the same person that did
Wicked, right?
Wicked? It caught me by surprise. Because I feel like when I read it, there was supposed to be a third one, but I really don't know if he ever wrote a third one. I don't really know.
So Wicked is a retelling of The Wizard of Oz.
So it's based on the same land.
Yeah, so it's in the same land, but it's basically telling you what The Wizard of Oz got incorrect.
Oh, interesting. Well, this book follows her son. And I definitely got the parts where she was misunderstood. So I was like, oh, she wasn't actually all that bad.
There was a lot of things going on. Oh, apparently, according to this, Gregory Maguire seems to do this a lot. So he also wrote A Lion Among Men. Is that from The Lion? And then Out of Oz, Confessions of an Ugly Stepsister. Oh, he wrote After Alice. I remember reading that book.
Well, there's his genre. Retellings of popular children's stories. Intriguing. Well, in true fashion, we still gotta end our episode, same way we always end all the episodes.
With a rapid fire question! Bum, 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 bum. So, my question comes from one of our listeners. A shout out to Nahan, who was my college roommate. I guess I was the alphabet to her Galinda, because she was always just very, like, bubbly, and everyone loved Nahan, and yeah. So, her question was, do you think other life forms exist out there?
I mean, statistically, yes.
And does it scare you more if they exist or don't exist?
Don't exist.
Yes, that's what I said too. I do believe that there are other life forms out there. Like, there has to be. We can't be the only things in the entire universe that exist. Like, that makes no sense to me at all. Just like, logically, scientifically.
Mathematically.
Yes, but it does scare me more if they don't exist, because that means that once this Earth is used up,
we are a literal singularity in the entire universe, which does, again, it's like, I don't want to talk about it, but no, yeah. So there should be someone else out there somewhere.
Somewhere.
And that's all I got. We can't go no farther on that question. It will stress me out.
That might have to be a whole episode on its own.
Honestly, bring one of those smart people on, astrophysicists or something.
One of them Neil deGrasse Tysons. Looking at you, Dr. Tyson, if you'd like to come on our show.
Not for real. Like,
you can find us on Instagram or Twitter.
Oh, what a fun episode that would be. Oh, I'd learned so much. I love space. Oh, that'd be so fun. Okay, anyways, my question is, what would you do if you had a clone? And this question came from Twitter. And the most popular answer is exactly what you would think it would be from Twitter. But we're not going to go with that answer. We're going to go with a different answer. So, what would you do with a clone?
Twitter is so out of pocket sometimes that I'm like, where is your parents? Who is your grandma? And why haven't they hit you?
Not that answer. Well, what would you do with the clone?
If I had a clone, I would, this is terrible, but I would make it cook and clean. I would make it do all the chores. I guess it could come and have fun too sometimes, but what's the time? That's terrible, isn't it? Or if I was like, I woke up and I was like, oh man, I really don't want to go to work today. Okay, Clemma, it's your turn.
Oh my god. She said, I'm using this clone.
What would you do?
Oh my god.
Oh wait, does my clone has feelings, right? I mean, like, I guess you could take turns. Like, okay, if you go to work this week, then I'm gonna stay home and like make sure dinner is cooked. But if I go to work this week, then you have to stay home.
I meant that you just like Cinderella'd your clone.
Wait, I'm so confused. What would you do? I feel bad now.
That's not what I thought you were going. Oh no. I I would, work with my clone to really just like explore the things that I want to do, but don't always feel safe to like, look more into tiny homes and like farming and the farm to table kitchen market and like the meal prepping. Like, I would use a clone to just do and help do all of the things that I want to do, but like there just isn't enough me to do everything.
I mean, I would say that's just like Cinderella-ing in a different way.
I don't know. I mean, I guess like because we would both be cleaning up and doing all that stuff, but you sounded like you just wanted a chore monster.
Or I would send my clone to go and get us a sugar daddy. That's what I would do.
Like, I don't care what you got to do, but you better come back rich.
Get that bread and leave. Well, now I feel bad, but yes, my clone would be a chore monster, as well as a sugar daddy hunter. Sometimes both. What else is she doing? But I guess if she wanted to go and have her own pursuits. Now this reminds me of, what is that? Orphan Black? Have you ever seen that show? Basically,
this is literally Cinderella. She wanted to go off and live her own life, and they wouldn't let her.
If she wanted to, she could. It's not like I'm keeping her here. It's not like I would lock her in the basement. It just would be nice if she stopped by every once in a while to come and help me cook and clean.
You almost as bad as them Twitter folk.
What did they say?
It was Twitter. You know what they said.
Oh.
Anyways, where can people find the podcast?
Please don't come at me, people. I really just was not. Or you know what? Actually, come at me. Whatever. I said what I said. You can find us on Instagram and Twitter at The Tea with Crema. You can also find us anywhere that you can stream your podcasts, as well as YouTube. If you'd like to send us a tip or just send us a cup of coffee, you can also Venmo us at The Tea with Crema. We hope to see you next time. Bye!